Friends of the Jefferson Law Library, thank you for coming to our series. We have a number of these. I believe the next one is coming up. It's about flood, isn't that something? It was and I can't recall.
Or tornado, I
The
believe.
tornado, that's right. And that's somewhere around July 17th or something like that. Yeah, there's a handout outside. By the way, our speaker today, this is the third time that he's spoken. And the first two were absolutely fantastic. He had a book called Consent Is. And I read the book, and I would recommend it if you haven't read it. I believe every freshman in college, entering college, should read that book. Then also he had a second book on Title IX, which he spoke about. I did not realize the contours of Title IX. It was broader than I could have ever believed. This new book is something different altogether. It's a collection of essays and so forth, but in a lot of ways the topics are still the same. There's the sexual crime, sexual predation. I would call sexual cruelty. Shannon Faulkner at the Citadel. Yep. There's a great one about the worth of a black girl, right? And that's the title of it. So I know you're going to enjoy the talk. I can't wait though to tell you something that you may already know. There's some reference in there about MC Hammer about being lame, I guess. Well,
anything but.
Anything but. And I was going to tell you, I don't know if y'all realize it or not. MC Hammer's last name is Burrell. He's from Oakland. He's the owner of the Oaktown Stables. Oaktown Stables won the Oaks with a horse called Light, trained by Dwayne Lucas. And then the following year, they came back with a horse called Dance Music, trained by Jerry Hollendorfer, a California trainer, came in third in the Derby. So you can't touch that.
Good one, Mark.
No, I'm a big fan of dad humor, so that hit right here with me. Well, hey, thank y'all for having me back. I think at this point, as long as you keep on feeding me free lunch, I'll keep writing books. So that's my motivation to keep getting these things published. But thank you guys for having me, and excited to kind of talk about the book and answer questions and all this stuff. So I figured maybe the route to go is just kind of talk about the inspiration behind this, why we wrote this in the first place, and then maybe kind of talk about maybe a few of my favorite chapters from there, and then just keep it light and keep it casual and everything. But yeah, we'll get started. First, so I was born in 1983, so I'm a 80s baby, but I'm a 90s kid, and it is so surreal that my childhood is now considered 20th century history. My daughter, who's a supreme smart aleck, will always be like, "So Dad, back in the 1900s, I'm like, okay, all right." So she definitely knows the words to say to get on under my skin. But yeah, so where this thing came about, I'd say probably about 2 years ago, top of 2023. My wife got us all on a family plan at AT&T. And why this is important is because one of the incentives, we got a free subscription to HBO Max, or HBO Go at the time. And that was great. HBO was always one of those things in the 90s that I wanted, but my mom was like, "I'm not paying extra for that. We don't need that, and we don't need cable. You got these 5 channels, you can deal with it." So, my whole adulthood has been trying to get the things that I didn't have. So Jordans, starter jackets, and HBO. I got all 3 now, so look at me. But we got HBO, and kind of going through and just taking a look at things to watch, and I really enjoy the documentaries that they do. There was a documentary on January the 6th that was really good, but the first one I watched was on Woodstock 99. Now, I remember Woodstock 99. It was the year between my sophomore and my junior year in high school. So I vaguely remember Woodstock 99. What I remember from that specific event was, they're doing the 60s thing, but with 90s artists. And I knew it was really hot, and I knew that it literally ended in flames burning down. We didn't buy the pay-per-view. come on, we barely had cable, so we definitely weren't buying the pay-per-view to watch the concert. But I remember watching the MTV News with Kurt Loder as they reported on, you know, this thing going up in flames. And I remember as a kid, I was like, wow, that looks kind of fun. So then we go and we watch the documentary, and there were so many different pieces that I missed as a kid as to why we got to that point where this music festival is on fire in the first place. The price gouging, the unbearable heat, the packing all of these people in one spot without adequate water or adequate sanitation. There was water, but you're gonna pay $6 for a bottle of water, and I know that's commonplace today, but in the 90s, maybe not so much. And then all of the sexual misconduct that happened throughout the festival, with women being sexually assaulted as well. And so I watch it, my friends watch it, and about a week later, we're all talking about it, and we're like, man, I didn't know all that stuff was going on when it was happening. And you know, we were just talking about how interesting it was to look at it with adult eyes. And like one of my friends was like, you know, someone really ought to write a book where they go back and they look at all of the stuff that we went through as kids, but we look at it with adult eyes, and we're able to figure out the things our parents weren't telling us, and all the nuances that we missed, and just really examine all of this 90s stuff in a post-Me Too world with adult eyes on it. Someone really should write that. And like everyone starts looking at me, I'm like, babe, I think I got the next one. I think I know what we're gonna do. So that was the birth. That was the birth of 90s Man. Like I said, going back, looking at some of the stories, some of the big stories of that decade, but also some of the small stories as well. And kind of figuring out how these things tie to things that we're still dealing with today in the 2020s. I wouldn't be doing it justice if I didn't also talk real quick about the Timeline series. For those of you who love some good YouTube binging, there is a channel called Weird History, and they do these timeline series where they will go decade to decade, and it'll just be like a quick little 20-minute video, but they'll go from January all the way to December and point out all the stuff that was happening politically, in athletics, in entertainment, on television. And you know, I was kind of watching those at the same time, so it's like we could do a timeline where we could flesh it out and look at some of the stories that maybe fell under the radar, as well as the big ones as well. So I got to researching, I got to writing, and it was very fun to go back and relive these stories, but figure out the parts that I didn't know about, and I didn't want it to be a book of just like retelling the stories, right? So for instance, O.J. Simpson, right? Full disclaimer, the O.J. Simpson case, if I had to say like what is like, Joey, what's your favorite court case ever? That would be it. My autographed copy of Prosecutor Darden's autobiography is like one of my prized possessions. So that's my jam. But there is just so much in the world about that case, right? ESPN, they produced a documentary called Made in America a few years ago, 5 parts, and like each part is like 2 hours long. So like, what else could I possibly say about O.J. Simpson that ESPN didn't cover? I don't need to rewrite that story. But before we get to the Bronco chase, there are decades worth of domestic violence. I mean, that's the story of O.J. and Nicole, is domestic violence. And that's the story that a lot of women right now are living, is domestic violence. And unfortunately, the ending of that O.J. story is relevant to what a lot of people are dealing with right now. So, okay, maybe I can write an essay about domestic violence, and we can write an essay about the characteristics of a domestic abuser, but we can use O.J. as the framing for it. And that really worked. I teach law students, but I also teach undergrads as well. And what I find with my undergrads is if I'm going to take a topic and really unfold it for them, it's always better if I can find something that they can relate to get them the topic. I can talk all day about the law when it comes to domestic violence and non-violent domestic violence, or I can pull up Kim Kardashian and Kanye West in real time as their marriage is breaking up and use that as the framing for what I want to do. And I'll give you one guess as to what lands with them a little bit better than just Mr. Boring Law Professor guy. So maybe that's what we'll do in the book. Larry Nassar, another example. I can sit here and I can recap who he is, what he did. I can recap all of the bad actors, Michigan State University, in that particular case. Or I can use this as a framing device to talk about grooming, which, once again, is still happening right now. I have an 11-year-old daughter. We gave her a cell phone, which I kick myself every day for doing that, but it's one of those things you got to do. But online grooming is a conversation that we have over and over and over again with her, because it's a thing. So let's use Larry Nassar as the framing. Anita Hill. I worked over at the county attorney's office when Christine Blasey Ford was giving her testimony. And it was just like one of those things. I mean, it was like the Olympics for a bunch of law clerk nerds. We're just all huddled around the phone, not working at all, but watching, don't tell Mike about this, but watching, this interview and this testimony. And I remember talking to my mom about it, and she was like, I mean, that's just Anita Hill all over again. And I'm like, what? And then my mom tells me that story, and I'm like, oh, so it's literally the same thing. We have our guy who we want in the Supreme Court, and we gonna get him there regardless of what he did, because if there is power on the table, then damn it, we gonna grab it. So it's interesting to see all of these stories that happened, 30 years ago, and how they're still relevant if you kind of dig a little bit today. So that's kind of the bulk of this book. I also wanted to talk about kind of where I'm at in this book. So you talked about the Consent Is book, which is just kind of a breakdown of what consent looks like. If I was ever to write a biography, Consent Is would be Joey the college years. This is Joey the growing up years. So I wanted to put where I was at during this time, what I was understanding, what wasn't being told to me, and kind of what my thoughts were. Lorena Bobbitt, right? I didn't know that this was a big thing about marital rape. I didn't know that this was a big thing about victim blaming. I was a kid. All I knew is that there was a guy who got his penis cut off. That's all I knew. And that's all anyone on that playground knew. And that's all we needed to know, because as an 8-year-old, what happened to that guy? That is insane. That's all we needed to know. But I wanted to kind of capture that energy that I had at the time, but then also talk in my present voice as to, but here's the part that Mom didn't tell me about that case. Because, parents, we have a way of trying to shield our kids from different things in the news, but sometimes that shielding, you can't really shield us from what the kids are talking about at school. So that's kind of with Blair, we try to take the steps of explaining things, even that perhaps my mom would say that's a little bit too advanced for her. It's I'd rather you hear it here from your law school dad than from those wild kids you hang out with on the playground. So that was another thing to add. As we wrote, we realized hey, we can get cute with this thing, and we can have little miniature timeline stories inside of this bigger book. So for instance, obviously hip hop, if you were to say that the 90s were the golden age for rap music, I wouldn't argue with you that much. If you said the 2000s were the golden age, I'd agree with you there too. But depending on what day I wake up, yeah, the 90s were a great time. But it also tells the story of Black masculinity if you go through the decade. We start with very positive, very upbeat music. Music that is really talking about a lot of political things that are happening at the time. It is cool to be an intellectual, you know, and around the same time you also have the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that's going, you have MC Hammer that's going, and these are the big things. Everyone is very pro-Africa and trying to learn about our heritage. And then 2 years later, Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg come, here comes gangster rap, and the same women who were sisters and queens 2 years ago are now bitches and hoes. And if you are a young Black male growing up in this time, you kind of gotta, you gotta follow the path, or else you're gonna be a nerd and made fun of. I was made fun of. But that's kind of what you have to do. And then towards the end of the decade, then masculinity, the markings of masculinity change even more because now maybe the ultra violent stuff isn't as cool, but now it's about materialism. And it's about what, you know, car you can drive, what jewelry you can have. You can buy your Black masculinity card during that time, which is fine for me. I'll do that. And I didn't have Gucci, but I had Abercrombie and Fitch, and that may as well have been Gucci in New Albany, Indiana. So these three different essays kind of combine together. You don't have to read anything else in this book, but you can read those three, and then that kind of goes together. Another line is how we approached and viewed the LGBTQ plus community in the 90s, how we start the decade, and when we're looking at HIV and AIDS, we have folks in the government that are referring to that as gay cancer. And what it took was someone like Magic Johnson to get HIV and AIDS, or Eazy-E to get HIV and AIDS, for us to realize, oh, this is like all of our problem. And then like it's funny to kind of go back and to like look at some of those PSAs that people put out, because you have rappers and R&B singers putting these PSAs out about safe sex and condoms, and it's just kind of funny because it's like, but like 2 years ago you were saying this, but okay, whatever it takes to get there. We look at how media, is that me? No.
I'm sorry.
I know you're good. We look at kind of how media viewed the LGBTQ plus community and some of the big milestones that happened there. If you're ever wondering what the first gay marriage ever was in a television show, it was on a show called Rock. And I could talk about that show for a whole hour, so don't get me into it. But it was on a Black sitcom called Rock that used to come on Fox. And then we saw other firsts too throughout the decade, all the way to the point where Ellen is coming out on her show. And like, once again, back in the day, it's like, oh, Ellen came out. This is great. This is amazing. But then like all of the backlash that came to her and also to other folks that were a part of that show. But then we end with Will and Grace. We end the decade with Will and Grace. And it's just amazing how we've gone from one extreme to the next. So you have some stuff in there. And then there's the toxic trifecta. So anytime tragedy strikes and we want to, we want to talk about the problem, but avoid talking about the root of the problem, well, that's fine, because we can always just blame violent video games, violent movies, and violent music for those issues. But I don't know, maybe the question should be, does violent media really cause real violent action. So over 3 different articles, we take a look at violent video games, and I loved Mortal Kombat. That was just my favorite thing to play in the entire world. So, we look at stuff like that. We look at the Terminator 2, which I may have just watched yesterday at work because we don't do anything on college campuses in the summertime except watch Terminator 2. So, movies, and then of course, aggressive music towards the end, and that gave me an opportunity to go back and listen to nu metal again, which, listening to Limp Bizkit in 2025, it's an experience. But yeah, so you can read this whole thing cover to cover. You can focus on one chapter, and every chapter in here is a different year, or you can find those timelines and you can kind of read those timelines. And I was so nice that in the intro to this book, I wrote what those timelines were. So you can just, kind of pick those essays out if you want to read in that area as well. So yeah, I guess I just want to, take a little bit of time to talk about some of the favorite things that I wrote in here, and, not read them word for word, but, kind of talk about, what the purpose of it was. Hillman Class of 93 is an article that is in the 1993 chapter. There was a show that used to come on called A Different World. And A Different World, it was produced by Bill Cosby. It used to come on at 8:30 on NBC right after the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and it was set at a fictional HBCU called Hillman. And as a kid watching that show, I was young, didn't know much about college, didn't really understand a lot, but that was like the first experience that I ever had with higher education. And I knew from watching that, like, oh, I want to be like those kids. I want to be like Dwayne Wayne. I'm going to college. Don't know which one I'm going to go to, but I'm going to go. And, when you kind of look at the numbers, you kind of see an uptick in Black students that are going to college based on the inspiration they got from watching that specific show. And I don't have the numbers by the book if you want them. They're in there, but you kind of see this elevation of interest in college from Black students. And a lot of people that you interview will say, like, yeah, that's the reason that I chose to go to K-State. That's the reason that I chose to go to an HBCU, is because of that show. So it's just kind of interesting how this sitcom, and I want to say played for laugh, but it also had a lot of social elements to it as well. But how, a sitcom can inspire folks to go out and actually do something amazing with their lives. And I argue that, hey, we could bring that show back tomorrow, and we could do a brand new different world, and maybe inspire a different generation to go into higher ed. So that was a fun one to write about. A Rape at the Rock and Roll Show. So this was about the Woodstock '99 debacle. But we really kind of take a look at sexual misconduct at music festivals as a whole. There's a festival called Wilder Horses that's in Michigan. It is a country festival. And if you Google the little promo video for Wilder Horses, it might be exactly what you would expect a country festival in 2025 to look like. Very heavy on the bro culture. Bunch of shirtless guys, girls in bikini, Luke Bryan on stage, just pour a bunch of beer on top of all of it. And that's Wilder Horses. Fun weekend. But then you kind of start digging in a little bit more, and you start hearing about the high percentage of sexual misconduct and sexual assault that is happening at this festival. And you think to yourself, well, like, hey, why doesn't one of the promoters do something about this or try to make it safe? But whenever you interview those promoters, the response is, this festival just makes too much money. So if a couple rapes is what we have to deal with per year, but the money. And it's like, okay, that's never sending my kid to a music festival ever again. I probably shouldn't even be there either. But it just kind of shows us still how these issues from all these years back are still going on, and our priority when it comes to music festivals being on the money instead of the safety. Now, that being said, I can say that this year, maybe about 2 weeks ago at this point, we went to Railbird. And it was very interesting. Bailey Zimmerman was on stage, and you only get like an hour at Railbird. So like just when your set's getting going, you have to stop. And it was interesting, Bailey took about 10 minutes in his set to like stop the music because something was happening. Now we were all the way in the back, so I'm not sure what that something was. You know, I don't know if it was heat exhaustion. It wasn't that hot outside. Something was going on over here. And so he stops the music. He makes sure that whatever that is gets taken care of. It completely destroyed his set, but it was very interesting to like see like, okay, maybe we're in a spot now where the people on stage with the big microphone can do something about what's going on with us in the crowd. So that gave me a little bit of hope to kind of see that. But that was, you know, that was a fun one to go back and once again dissect exactly why this music festival ended in a absolute riot and in flames. It's not all Limp Bizkit's fault, but 75% of it is. We talk about Girls Gone Wild because that was a thing, and look, I'm not going to call anyone in this room out, but if you are a male of a certain age, you remember those commercials. They came on at 11 o'clock, and you're just, you know, watching regular TV, and then all of a sudden you hear these steel drums playing, and then it's all right there in your face. And through Girls Gone Wild, we kind of look and we try to answer the question of whether pornography is empowering or if it exploits folks. We look at Girls Gone Wild. We also take a look at Playboy, and then just the video pornography industry as a whole, to kind of answer those questions. I don't want to go too deep into it, but the Playboy contract, right? The Playboy contract is like a centerpiece of this thing. So if you were photographed for Playboy, you would get like $30,000, which sounds great, right? $30,000 for a photo shoot, and I get to be like famous for a couple months. Awesome. But like the contract is written in a way where it's like not quite so awesome because you didn't get that full $30,000 all at once. You got it over 3 years. You got $10,000 right whenever you did your shoot. Okay. Second year, you got the other $10,000 when your issue came out, and then if you were good, you got the other $10,000 the year after that. What makes this thing even worse is that you weren't allowed to work anywhere else while you were waiting to get your money. So, which stinks because you would imagine that like, okay, hey, I am Miss January. If there was ever a time to cash in on this and to get other modeling gigs or television shows or movie roles, it would be right now. But you can't. All you can do is show up at the different Playboy events and at the different parties and essentially be a slave to Hugh Hefner. And then you got your money. So $30,000 is really working a job and only making $10,000 per year. So yeah, that kind of I think that's on the exploitation side. Of course, you know that is, you might as well be a millionaire when you compare it to the Girls Gone Wild contracts, which 9 times out of 10 weren't even signed. If they were signed, it was signed by people that had no business signing a contract. due to whatever level of intoxication that they were in. And there wasn't any money. There was maybe a t-shirt, there was maybe a hat, or there were maybe just beads that were given, but no money at all given to the people that are actually in these videos. But then you have Joe Francis in a private jet with a mansion. Put it to you like this, Joe Francis right now is avoiding litigation in America, and he just moved to Mexico, and he's living good in Mexico too. One day I hope I have avoid the law, move to Mexico money. Probably won't make that working at the university, but you never know. Maybe if I go to athletics, I'll have that. All that to say, yeah, maybe there are areas that, kind of exploit more than empower. But then in 2025, we have a thing called OnlyFans, which is the butt of a lot of jokes, but 80% of earnings go back to the actual content creators. So if there's an argument to be made as to what is the most fair, maybe that's it. I think my students just really are blown away by the fact that I'm really talking about this in class. But no, it's definitely a question to ask whether or not pornography is truly empowering, or whether it's just something to exploit women. Just like any other good law question, it depends. It depends. One more, maybe one or two more, and then maybe you can answer some questions if you have them. Down goes Tyson. So Mike Tyson in the 90s, right? The biggest boxer in the whole decade. I mean, he had his own video game on Nintendo. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, one of the hardest, most frustrating games ever, but I look back on it fondly. Mike Tyson was everywhere. Until he wasn't, because he got found guilty for raping a beauty contestant. And the reason that this was so big is because this happened in Indianapolis. As someone who grew up in Indiana, this was the biggest story in the entire world. We have the most famous man in the world in our jails in Indiana. It was something else. But once again, I'm a little kid. I know that Mike Tyson's arrested. I don't know what he's arrested for. I know it is something called rape though, but I don't know what that is because they never taught this stuff in the Floyd County school system in Indiana. And I remember I had a buddy named Adam Carroll, and I love this guy, but Adam was always that kid that even if he didn't know the answer to the question, he was gonna make something up. So I leaned over like, hey, because our teacher used to bring the TV card in whenever there was something big on the news. So we're watching this story on Mike Tyson. So I lean over to Adam like, dude, what is this? What is rape? Do you know what this is? I don't know what this is. And Adam's like, well, I think it's when you just grab somebody by their neck and you shake them. And I'm like, oh, that gets you put in jail? I was shaking David a minute ago. You gotta come get me. He didn't know. And it'd be years until I figured that out. But it raises the question, when is the right time to have conversations with our children about sexual misconduct? When is it the right time? When is too young to have conversations with our kids about consent? Some folks, folks in the wonderful state of Utah, would say we shouldn't even talk about sex education at all. They don't need to know how this stuff works. The stork. Okay, I guess that might work for Utah folk, but I'm of the impression that the sooner the better. By the time students get to me and have to come into my office for a Title IX complaint, a lot of times it's too late. And I'm just like, gosh, did they not teach you any of this stuff in high school? No, they didn't. So maybe high school is the time, maybe middle school is the time. My daughter goes into 6th grade next year, and Woo, the hormones. It is, yeah, it's scary. But it was even scary last year in 5th grade. So maybe elementary school is when we should have these conversations. Maybe even before elementary school. My kid is tall. I'm 6'2". Her mother is 5'10". Blair is a very tall girl. She hulks over other children. And she's always done this, even in preschool. So her last day of preschool, she's like saying bye to all of her friends, and she knows, like, I'm never gonna see these kids again. So she's saying bye to everyone, and like, at least back then, before she just started hating everyone, she was a hugger. But like, not just like no, she's like picking kids up off the ground with their feet dangling, giving them hugs. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching that, I'm like, that is so cute. But that's also an opportunity to have a conversation about consent, right? So she gets in the car and I'm like, hey, listen, I love that that's how you show compassion, is by hugging people. You just gotta ask them their permission, because some people don't like to be hugged. Some people might just like a handshake or a high five. Some people don't even like that. They just like a good head nod. So just ask and, then love accordingly. I say, okay, cool, I got it. I'm like, okay, cool, this preschooler can get it. Maybe these college kids, but then again, it might be too late. So when can we start talking, and when should we start talking to kids about sexual misconduct? Because I wish I had have known what sexual assault was. I don't think it was probably until high school that I really kind of sort of figured it out. And that was all because I just figured it out on my own. I didn't have a parent or a coach or a director or anyone to tell me. It's just kind of one of those things you got to figure out on your own. So when should we talk to kids about sexual misconduct? Thank you, Mike Tyson, for helping us figure that out. And then, I'll end with this one. Girls. And this has actually been a presentation that I've given now at several colleges. But the 90s, when we start the 90s, and I mean like right there at 1990, we have now gone into third wave feminism. New decade, new problems, new issue, it's time for new answers. And third wave feminism kind of starts with the decade and then goes on into the 2000s. But one of the interesting parts of third wave feminism is the way that we were able to get this out to the masses. You can pay money to go to a university and take a gender studies or a women's studies class, and that's fine, but not everyone goes to college. Either because you don't want to, or maybe you're too young to go. But we used music throughout the 90s as kind of a vehicle to get third wave feminism out of the halls of academia and right into living rooms and bedrooms of young children across the country. It starts with the Riot Girl movement of the early 90s, which is a time where we're able to say, hey, women can be punk rockers too. We can play guitars, we can play the drums, we can sing, and we can do all the stuff that the daggone Ramones were doing, maybe even a little bit better. So once again, this is one of those stories that kind of gets tucked underneath the table, because at the same time you have the grunge movement coming and Kurt Cobain. Everyone knows Kurt Cobain, so everyone knows who Nirvana is. Maybe not that many people know about Bikini Kill, but you have this whole other movement going on in Washington, where we are able to take sisterhood, camaraderie, women's empowerment, sex positivity, and put it in these little 2.5-minute punk rock songs. So once again, if you didn't go to college, that's great. You didn't have to. All you had to have was this little bootleg tape that you got from your cousin's cool sister that lives across the country, and boom, it was like taking a gender studies class right in your earphones. Midway through the decade, well, Riot Girl is kind of fading off, but don't you worry, because there was a whole other group that was about to take third wave feminism, or as they called it, girl power, straight to the masses, and I'm talking about the Spice Girls. history has been, I think, very friendly to the Spice Girls now that we can look back and we can understand what it was all about. I remember like, like it was cool for the girls to listen to Spice Girls. Like it wasn't like that cool for boys to listen to the Spice Girls, but I wasn't cool. I loved it, so I had all the tapes. But like you have this group that is taking the same elements of third wave feminism, but they are doing it in a way that young preteen teeny boppers can get behind in the mainstream. Of course, you have argument from some of the older folks. Well, you're just taking all the Riot Girl stuff and kind of dumbing it down and watering it down, and this isn't real feminism. This is just, lightweight commercial stuff. And it's like, dude, who cares? Because like you have like millions of girls that are talking about girl power right now that are like actually being friends with each other and actually working with each other and actually like standing up and feeling strong. So yeah, I'll take that, right? And then towards the end of the decade, now we are in a position where we have another question that we have to answer about women in music. And that's whether women can be financially productive in music. Now we got a lot of great women during this time. We got your Sheryl Crows out there. We got Lance Morissette. We got a lot of great women doing great music, but there's still this idea that women aren't gonna sell. So if you are listening to DJ X at the time, you may hear the new Alanis Morissette song, but then after that, you're gonna hear like 4 or 5 other songs by men before you circle back around to another song by a woman. Because we can't play 2 women back to back, because if we play 2 women back to back, they're gonna think this is a female channel and they're gonna turn it off. And don't even think about having women on the same bill at a concert. Women can headline alongside of a male headliner, but you're not gonna have 2 or 3 women headlining the same concert. There may be other women at your festival, but they're gonna be like in the print that's hard to read down at the bottom. We only got room for 1. But Sarah McLachlan was like, I don't know about that. That might not be the truth. Anytime I'm working with the undergrads, I always ask them, like, do y'all know who Sarah McLachlan is? And they're like, no, we don't. I'm like, you may not know who she is, but you know her work. Have you ever seen those commercials of those sad dogs and they're saying, in the arms of an angel? And everyone knows that. And I'm like, if you ever want to trigger a millennial, just sing the first line and we will get sad, because we're thinking about sad looking animals that for 25 cents a day we can save. But that's Sarah McLachlan, and she decides, hey, you know what? Lilith Fair. Let's try it. Let's see what happens if we put together an all-female festival. This thing tours 37 different places within the year and becomes one of the most productive financially festivals of the entire decade, right? Of course, once again, you have people, yeah, whatever, this is just feminism, but it's like watered down feminism light, diet feminism for soccer moms. And it's like, but soccer moms are women too, right? Don't they deserve to have a piece of this? Like, we got all you grunge women over here. We got the teeny boppers. Well, now the parents need some love as well. The other criticism was that after the first Little Affair was that it was way too white. And if you look at the first Little Affair, but the cool thing about Sarah McLachlan is that she listens to criticism. So the next year you see Missy Elliott on stage with the big garbage bag outfit on. And once again, the kids look at it's like, what is she wearing? I'm like, it was a whole thing back then. You don't even know. But Missy Elliott, Erykah Badu is on the Little Affair stage. They have 2 main stages, and then they have this up and coming village stage. And it just blows my mind to ever think that once upon a time Christina Aguilera was considered up and coming, but there's little Christina Aguilera playing at the village stage, and this thing goes on for 3 years and kind of closes out the decade. And so then we ask ourselves, like, okay, music, right? What a great way to kind of get across messages outside of the classroom to the common folk among us out here. And if we look at third wave feminism and females in music in the 90s, we see exactly that. And I argue to this day, Lilith Fair 2025 could work. It could be a thing. If you could put Megan Thee Stallion on Friday night, Beyonce on Saturday, and Taylor Swift on Sunday, you could charge $17,000 to that festival and it would sell out every single night. So yeah, don't tell me that that we couldn't do Lilith Fair 2025. So someone call Rock Nation and let's make it happen. So those are just like a few of the stories that we talk about. There's other things in here that I didn't even know was a thing until I had a friend nudge me and say, hey, you should write about Shannon Faulkner. Who's Shannon Faulkner? Oh, she's the woman that like had to battle to get into the Citadel. I'm like, oh. And then I realized, oh wait, I've seen a Simpsons episode about this very thing. I didn't know that was a real story though. Okay, cool, let's write about it. So, we have lesser known stories like that. The story, A Black Girl's Worth, I think is a very nice little piece to sit right in the middle. Because once again, it ties into where we're at right now, right? Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, Diddy is on trial. And like, there were a lot of people, no, let me just call it how it is. There were a lot of black men that did not believe Cassie at first, and called her a gold digger and called her all types of other names and made the argument, but they're tearing down another black icon in our culture and this is terrible. And then you see a video of him dragging her by her hair down a hotel room or a hotel hallway. And then it's like, so what was you saying again? What was you saying about it not being true? And we just kind of look at how, yeah, it's bad enough to be a woman in an area where sexual assault is so rampant anyway, but it's even worse being a black woman in that area where you're not going to be believed because you're black. And sometimes you are targeted because you're a black woman and you know that people are going to believe you a little bit less. So, cue an R. Kelly song right now. But what really is a black girl's worth when it comes to sexual misconduct? If we look at history, maybe not that much. So we write about stuff like this because we got to know what we're trying to change if we're going to change it. So there's that sitting in the middle. So all in all, it was fun writing this. It was fun going back and looking at my childhood through adult lenses. If you're of a certain age, you might have fun reading this and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. This is being taught as a class in the spring semester at IU Southeast for our honor students. Whenever I was an undergrad, we had this class called the History of Rock and Roll. And that class was so fun. I never got to take it because it was always filled up super duper quick, but I always wanted to teach a really fun class that's based on pop culture and pop media, and they're gonna let me do it with the undergrads over at IU Southeast. So we'll be teaching this next semester, and hopefully we'll have some fun doing it. But yeah. Any questions that I can answer? And I got copies over here, so you can buy one today if you want. But let's start from the back and work our way up front.
I just so thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. I was born in 1984, and I definitely reached a certain age. Like being so happy to hear about my childhood. But I wanted to ask you. So the dream of the '90s is alive in Portland. But interestingly, the 90s things in Portlandia were kind of my college experience in '03. I know there's not like quick cutoffs between the decade, but I wonder, after all of your research and now that you're the expert on the 90s, is the dream of the 90s alive in Portland? Does that resonate with you, or?
I don't know if I went to the right part of Portland whenever I was out there because.
Yeah, right.
But. I think that what I'm realizing in my 42 years on this world is that we always find ways to circle back to stuff. And I think we are kind of circled back into some of the 90s stuff right now. I think that the youth, or at least sections of the youth, are kind of looking at it and seeing like, oh, that was kind of cool back then. For example, for Christmas, I usually scroll right past ads on Instagram, but there was this ad for this, like, it's called a camp camera. It's a digital camera, but without a screen on it. So you actually have to look through the little hole and take the picture. And I had that at the music festival. And my daughter's like, that's how you like took pictures back then? And I was like, yeah. And it's like, but so you couldn't just post them right away? I'm like, no. So you could take the picture and then just like enjoy the concert. I'm like, right? And it's just like, it clicked. It's like, oh, we might be onto something. I have heard rumblings through the TikTok sphere that Blackberries might be coming back. And like, I'm like, oh, sign me up. Matter of fact, give me a pager, because I hate the amount of contact people have with me on this phone. It's got a new radio put in my car, and like it has all these icons, and there's an icon for Microsoft Teams on the car radio. I'm like, I don't want this in the car. I don't want Microsoft Teams. So give me a pager where I can call you back at my leisure. I'm wearing jeans right now that are marketed as 90s straight leg jeans from Old Navy. I'm like, okay, that's for me. So I don't know. I think that we might be there in some elements of kind of what the 90s looked like. Certainly with the bad stuff, we're there. The bad stuff never left. It just took on different, views. And where we are currently at with different policies that's being changed and laws being changed, I mean, it definitely feels like don't ask, don't tell might be right around the corner again. So like, yeah, all the bad stuff never left, but like maybe some of the good stuff is here as well. There's a band called The Paradox, which is like pop, like a modern day pop punk band, and I'm like, sure does sound like my time. So I don't know. We might already be there, I think. Yeah.
So I actually have three. The first one's really quick. When did you graduate high school? Because I knew Adam Carroll.
Oh, 2001. Yep.
You were a little before me.
Oh, one.
The second one is you were talking about Playboy. Did you watch the Playboy murders documentaries?
I watched a Playboy documentary. I don't know if it was the Playboy murders documentary, but I know what I'm about to watch when I get back to my office.
I want to say it's on HBO, and there's like 3 episodes.
Okay, no, I watched the one on AE.
Okay. The third question was, you were talking about Larry Nassar and the grooming with that. Did you do any research or reference any of the Nickelodeon stuff?
No, because this was done before
That came out.
and I dug into it, but it's like, oh, I used to love Nickelodeon too.
Did you watch the documentary?
Yeah, some pretty foul stuff. And now when you go back into it and you're like, oh, that's why feet were so prominent in all of these shows. Like, just take my childhood and just like there. So yeah, the Nickelodeon stuff was it was rough. It was rough.
I was just gonna ask if I could audit your class.
Yeah, come on by. The more the merrier, and I try to be entertaining for this, for the students, and even my law students, we're not maybe teaching this stuff over at the law school, but I tell them, I'm like, listen, no disrespect to my colleagues, but like you guys are gonna have so many boring classes with boring stuff taught by boring professors that you don't want to be in. I know, because they're the same professors that were here when I was here. I'm gonna try to do it differently though. Your whole time here as a student may suck, but it's not gonna be because of this class right here. This will be your refuge. So we teach that class at 5:30 to 7:15 at night, and like every year they're like, it is amazing that you were able to get people to sign up for this class that late. I'm like, well, it's either because I'm a good teacher or they know I'm an easy grader. I don't know, but I'll take it because I keep getting paid for it. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. It's going to be fun telling the stories. So
I really enjoyed reading it.
Thank you. Any other? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for doing this and really enjoyable presentation. A couple of quick questions. How many years was Different World on? How many years did that run? And as you were, going through the 90s doing your research, and I know we have the Indiana thing with Tyson, was there anything that happened in Louisville or in Kentucky during the 90s to make your book, or that almost made it?
So A Different World, I believe 4 calendar years.
Okay.
Now, a season back then was like maybe 25, 30 episodes. I feel like these days, like a season of a show is like 10. So there's a ton of episodes, but it was only on for maybe 4 calendar years. Gone way too soon. They always talk about, oh, we're going to do a revival. And I'm like, I'm waiting. Whenever you want to do the revival, let me know. We will have a Different World watching club at our school if you do one. Things that happened around here that almost made the book. For a brief moment, I thought about taking a look at Shanda Share in that situation. I thought about it, but I couldn't really figure out what pocket that would fit in. So I kind of left that one alone. But that's something that could have made the book that was local.
Remind me who she is, please.
Let me go back through
12-year-old that was murdered by her friend.
That's it. Let me go back through the files. I got all these facts of different cases just in the little mental Rolodex. She was essentially kidnapped by classmates of hers. Was taken to a field in a little bit further north in Indiana. She was killed and then she was burned by her classmates. And those kids actually went to my middle school, or junior high school at the time. So we are all Hazelwood Junior High School folks. They were a little bit older than me, but Shanda Share was a huge deal back in New Albany, and I'd imagine it was probably a big thing over here as well, because we're the same. So that was a thought, but there's a whole lot of other stuff that almost made it. I wanted to write about professional wrestling, and how professional wrestling through the years just reflects what masculinity looked like. So in the 80s, like if you were going to be a manly man, you had the big muscles and probably on steroids like Hulk Hogan was. And then masculinity towards like in the 90s, it was all about the raunchiness. And then, but I realized I'm like, this is interesting to me because I'm a lifelong wrestling fan. If you are not a wrestling fan, this might be a chapter that you skip. So I might have going to spend all this time doing this and for people to be like, oh, the fake stuff, we'll move on. So that almost made it. And then there was a lot of video game stuff that I wanted to do, but whenever I feel motivated, that's book number 4 is gender studies through video games. So I'm like, I gotta hold some of this stuff back for future writing, but video game stuff that could have made the book as well. But
Can I ask one
Yeah.
quick follow from starting to when you finished it? What was the timeline in there?
Probably started this thing late January of 2023. And then finished in the fall of 2024. The layout for this book was miserable. This was the first book that I laid out myself, and it was a lot. And there's a lot of just silliness that goes into laying a book out and then getting it printed. This was supposed to be like a hardcover book. A big coffee table something, but then the stupid thing is so long, it's like, we can't put a hardcover because it's too big. I'm like, Barack Obama's book was way bigger than mine. It had a hardcover, but I guess our printer didn't want to do it, so it's a paperback. So it took probably about 3 months to get the layout and all the editing of it done. That was the other miserable part of it, was the editing. So yeah, probably a little over a year to write and then 3 or so months to edit and lay out. But I think it came out pretty solid.
So, from the editing, what did you do with the chapters that you took out?
Some of them didn't. Some of them. So the process that I did was, I just started writing, and like midway through, I could tell. It's like, if I'm bored writing this, people are going to be bored reading it.
Okay.
So I would just stop. So there was like a lot of stop and start stuff. I think I saved the wrestling stuff because I am going to do something with that at some point. But it's like, yeah, I'm like 2 pages in, and this is like putting me to sleep even researching and putting the ink on the page. So I know if I feel that way, no one's going to read this. So I just delete and move on.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed your session.
Yeah. One last cool thing about this book. So after dealing with publishing politics, which is politics and everything, publishing politics is so, it's a lot. But after dealing with publishing politics, me and my wife, we kind of sat down and we discussed, like, listen, this should be like, publishing and the literary world should just be something where you should just be able to write something. You should just be able to write something good, get it edited, and put it out there. And hopefully you've written something interesting enough that people want to pick it up and take a look at it. We have students that are doing that all the time in our classes. They're writing amazing things for their classes. They get their grade on it, and then that thing gets tucked away somewhere on a thumb drive and never sees the light of day again. And when they do try to get it published, they take it to an academic publishing press, and either A, they don't get called up, or B, they get called up, but they have to go through all the politics too. And it's just like, this should not be what publishing is. So after dealing with our last academic publisher and another independent publisher, we just thought, like, you know what is a publishing press anyway, other than a bunch of editors, writers, and a filing with the state of Kentucky? So we founded Prose and Proof Publishing back at the beginning of this year. And we consider it an independent academic press. So we are geared towards academic writing that's still peer reviewed, but without all of the flaming hoops that you have to jump through. At a place, I don't want to say the name because I'm trying to let the beef die. Without having to jump through all of the hoops. Before we got started, we were talking about the law journals at the University of Louisville and how since I've graduated, 2 of them have gone away. And there's only the law review now, but there's still 160 kids every year that are coming through having to write something. So let's give them a platform to publish. So that's what Prose and Proof is. We are an independent academic press working mainly with our students to get their works out. We had to put this thing out to kind of be the anchor that holds the whole thing down, but since then we have produced a gender studies journal with the undergraduates at Indiana University Southeast. And then the thing I think we're most excited about is we have a journal called Advanced Issues in Criminal Law, Sex Offenses, that is written by my sex offense students over at the law school. So we just put the first volume out at the end of the semester. We're editing volume number 2 right now. I wanted to have them come and present their work to you guys this summer, but then I realized, like, oh crap, all of you are studying for the bar exam. You don't have time to do anything. So maybe we can get you here in the fall and you can kind of maybe do like a little symposium and present your work, because you guys are doing some amazing stuff that even I didn't think of. So that's what we're doing right now. So it might be a little while before you see me with one of my books, but now I'm just happy to kind of bring my students through the door, and hopefully you'll find their works as valuable as well. So I got copies of this guy for sale if you want it, and if you're interested in the legal journal, it's on the University of Louisville's website for free download, and maybe I can share that with the library and you guys can put that out.
Yes.
But yes, it's on the University of Louisville's library website for free download. So hopefully you'll show a little love to the students. But yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me. If you have any questions, I'll hang out a little bit, but, yeah, thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you.